Hello, welcome to Staring Down the Storm, Autism Advocacy in America. I'm your host, Tabitha Ziegler. All right, welcome back, everybody. We have Natasha Baker with us today. Hi, Natasha.
Hello. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So let's get into it. Tell us your origin story. What you're about.
So I am a Hoosier raising Hoosiers. I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, and I grew up in an extremely conservative family. So my grandparents, who I lived with, on and off growing up, they have a Republican born, Republican bred, when I die, I'll be Republican dead sign still to this day hanging in their living room. When my grandpa passed 2 years ago, he was buried in a Make America Great Again hat.
Oh.
Yes. So, but I say that he was my favorite person in the world. But we're always different. He called me a tree hugger. We always knew that our politics were not the same, but that has really shaped me, and that shaped me as a person in terms of my values and what I believe. And I knew again that I didn't fit in with that conservative way of thinking. But I also, growing up in a very rural place, knew that I wanted to see something different, and I wasn't seeing it, and it led to a lot of confusion. When you go to vote and there's only Republicans on the ballot, I was just further confused by the messaging coming from a conservative family, and I wasn't really conservative, but then again, no one else was there to vote for, and I just felt a lack of identity when it comes to politics. Not when it came to values, but when it came to politics, because all the people I loved in my life were great people, yet they voted for these things that I didn't necessarily agree with, which then kind of led me to, after Donald Trump got elected, last year, he took office last year, and I had a lot of anxiety and a lot of feeling out of control when it came to big issues. I felt like I couldn't make a difference, and I had this epiphany on my drive to work one morning that I would be the person to put my name on the ballot. So I ended up putting my name on the ballot, and now I am sitting here, and it's been a wild ride for the past 5 months that I was told that, this was crazy and all of the things, and it is crazy and it is all the things, but I'm doing it, and I'm ready to do it, and I'm excited.
So what are you running for?
So I'm running for Indiana Senate District 22. So that is all of Carroll County and the eastern part of Tippecanoe County. So it includes cities like, it includes Flora, Delphi, Burlington, over kind of on the Carroll County side. And then the Tippecanoe side is where I'm from, which is Battleground. And then we have Lafayette, Dayton, Buck Creek, Stockwell, kind of those.
So you've got a little mix of rural and city.
I do. It is a huge mix of people, of places, of needs. The constituents out in Carroll County don't have the same needs as the constituents in downtown Lafayette. So it is definitely, it's a gerrymandered, mixed district.
So what do you think it is about you particularly that you fit that genre?
So I know that I am the best candidate in this race to meet the needs of all the people, because I have been a part of the district in all parts. So I live in the middle, and I teach out in Carroll County. I've been a teacher in the ruralest part of my district for 12 years. Oh, wow. And I've been out there forever, teaching these students, meeting with these families, knowing what this community needs. And then I have also lived in Lafayette. My husband lives in Lafayette. I graduated from Purdue. So I have that part of my district as well. And I'm very comfortable and familiar with that part, all the way out to the most rural spots.
Okay. So a large part of this show is we talk about autism and disability. So do you have anybody either in your family or that you're closely related to in some fashion that has any of those experiences?
So my nephew is autistic. He is 6 years old. He's nonverbal. I guess he is 7 now. And so he has been a part of my life, is in and out of my life some. But yeah, so that's a topic that's close to me.
Okay, well, let's dive into that a little bit more. So what specifically are you seeing in this state that you would like to change or maybe help shape in some fashion how we deal with autism and disability?
I think that it's absolutely important that we make sure that families have the services that they need. All of our legislation coming out right now that is wanting to cut Medicare, Medicaid, capping the amount of therapy hours is absolutely appalling to me. And we need to make sure that we are letting doctors and we're letting therapists make these decisions, and along with the families, of course. And there's no reason for a politician to get involved in a child's or an adult's healthcare plan. They don't know their needs. I know that my nephew, like I said, he's nonverbal. Mm-hmm. And I have seen him make great strides in his journey to speaking and to becoming potty trained. And he did all of that because he had good access to therapy. And so when I think of them cutting, ABA hours, it's a huge concern to me.
So for those people that are going to say, right, but we don't have enough money. So how would you give a compelling argument to these people of, we do indeed have enough money, or here's where we can pull this money?
So I think there's a few layers to this question. I think number one, it's important to realize that Indiana has a $5 billion surplus. And so there is money available. We are claiming that it is responsibility. It's not responsibility. It's negligence when there are needs not being met and we're just withholding money. We don't have a surplus. We're just hoarding money from the taxpayers who have paid into the system. And so there is money. But then again, I think another layer to this is Indiana has an income problem. We have many places that we take way more than what we are able to give. We take more electricity than we give. We take more federal dollars in general than what we're able to give to the federal government. And we do that because we give tax breaks to corporations. We have all these perks for data centers, and we are spending $3 billion on a highway in our governor's hometown that nobody actually wants. So there's money out there. It's just how are we spending it and who's benefiting from the money that we are spending? Because I know that it's not our children in our schools or children that need any kind of special services.
So now that we're talking about kids, what are your thoughts on RFK, vaccines in relation to autism? I mean, let's just do the whole gamut.
It is so frustrating to me that the vaccine and autism debate has been had over and over and over again. And every single time it has been concluded that vaccines and autism, there's no link there. And it frustrates me that we have people like RFK Jr. who comes out, and I feel like in some ways that argument starts to die down, and then another loud voice comes and starts perpetuating the same thing. I have a lot of opinions about the whole MAHA movement and all of that. I don't.
We can do that here.
It's like we should not be taking medical advice from someone who literally said that that he used to cocaine off of toilets. I'm like, what is going on? So that is number one, an issue, right? He doesn't have a medical background. He has no business talking about vaccines and autism and all of these things. It also really bothers me that they dangle, he likes to dangle like carrots in front of people. Like, let's get rid of food dyes because food dyes are what is causing all of these issues in our health. And so he gets, certain people distracted by these big headlines only to really be doing things over here. So cutting access to clean water, cutting access to just the ability to breathe clean air. And the pesticides, they just repealed, all of those kind of bans on different kinds of pesticides. And we know that those kinds of pesticides cause cancer and different kinds of autoimmune diseases. But don't worry, they got rid of those food dyes. And it's so frustrating when you see the big picture and you see so many focused on little pieces of it in the name of Make America Healthy Again, when we know that that's not what's going on.
So do you think that maybe you care more about this because you work with children?
I think so, definitely. I have children. So like I said, I have a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old, my nephew who is autistic. And I have seen them try some of these more unconventional ways. I think that any parent with an autistic child wants to do whatever they can to help that child. And so I've seen them try like camel's milk and all sorts of special diets, which is great if that's the path you want to take, but it's also important that we have access to data and medical research that really can support kind of autism and other disabilities from the other end as well.
What do you think the danger is of us? Because we're already getting rid of a lot of doctors, a lot of, experts in these fields. What do you think the danger is of us continuing down this path unchecked, specifically whenever it comes to autism?
I think what's going to happen is we are going to see, I can just see the headlines read out in the next few years, like autism rates have declined. And it's not that they've declined. It's we are all going to know it's because they're not being diagnosed. Parents are going to be afraid to get their children diagnosed and tested because of the rising stigma of being autistic or being disabled. And I think that we are headed down a path where people don't have access to the treatments that actually work. We are not going to have any new research to find out what these treatments are. We're going to be so busy giving our children camel's milk and hoping for the best and having no background in medical research to actually, really help the root cause of what's going on.
Right. So let's talk about eugenics. Are you aware of the 1907 eugenics law in the state?
I'm not aware. I know what eugenics is, and I am aware of how the current administration is kind of putting in some of those things into play, but I'm not aware of that specific law.
So for people that are curious, you can go to the State House. I think it's right outside the library, but it's somewhere very near the Capitol. There's a plaque, and it specifically talks about the 1907 eugenics law. So for a person that is autistic and has autistic children, immediately whenever I saw that RFK was starting to talk about autism, that's where my brain went. Because I know a little bit about the history and I know what happened, and I know that it wasn't exclusive to one group. There was a lot of abuse. There was a lot of other bad things going on, like mass sterilization. So this is why I feel like conversations like this are important. And because you also have a nephew that, it's one thing if a person feels, try camel's milk, things like that. But what I'm worried about is the slippery slope that goes that direction. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. And this, like I said at the beginning, when I was talking about how I felt very out of control it was last summer now. So almost, I don't know, I like to say I'm like 8 months recovered from that big mental breakdown I had last year when I really was feeling like things were headed in a very bad direction. I was feeling very hopeless. That was actually one of the eugenics thing was actually one of the biggest contributors to my anxiety that I was having because and it actually started when they talked about creating that autism registry. Mm-hmm. And I was in the process of getting my son tested for different disabilities. So he ended up, they did not say that he has autism, but he does have ADHD, though I'm still not convinced.
He's neurodivergent.
Yes, yeah. And I also have ADHD. So, I feel this. And so when they talked about creating a registry and I thought, well, my son has an IEP. That's not that far off. So who is going on this registry? What are they going to do with this registry once we have this autism registry? Because again, it's easy to get this documentation. Kids have IEPs at school. It's not hard to get, right? It's easy. It would be easy to create something like that. And I wondered immediately where that was going to go in terms of creating avenues for like getting people, putting people in the hospital without their consent, what that kind of treatment was going to look like, even though we know that that's not treatment. And I was very concerned as a parent. The thought of someone taking my child away to treat them for some illness that they thought actually was the reason that I feel like I had all of my anxiety and had to go on some anxiety meds for that thought exactly. Yeah.
What a shit show.
Right. It is always, whenever I feel like I don't have control over something that's happening to my children or that thought. I'm sure as a mom, you can relate to that. I thought of my child going onto some kind of registry because he has ADHD, or at the time I thought that he would, so yeah.
Well, that's actually kind of part of the reason why I ran too, because I looked at who was running and I was like, I'm not sold.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sold. And I feel like we need more neurodiverse people in these type of roles, right? That like, if we're going to be speaking about autism, ADHD, neurodiversity, we need those butts in those seats. Like, I'm very, very sick of seeing the lack of representation for the autism community, because I'm like, how can you advocate for a community that you really don't understand? And you can't really understand it unless you're living it. So at least you, for example, you have a connection there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's very valuable. And I think there are probably a lot of constituents in your area that they'll listen to this now and they'll be like, oh, thank God someone gets it.
Yeah, I mean,
a lot of people will be voting. Like, there are certain issues like this that for some families, they're going to see it as life and death, because if they get the wrong person in there and things go bad, they're going to be wondering, like, is this person going to stand up for my child?
and I think that's exactly right. And I think that we need people, whether it's for the state house or for Congress, we need people who have children at heart. We need people who, like myself and, like you, do understand, yes, this neurodivergence, and that people need access to medication. That was something else that I was concerned about last summer. Was I had postpartum depression really bad, and I've dealt with anxiety most of my life. And medication makes a huge difference for me. I'm a lucky person that taking the right meds really helps. And you hear these politicians, I think last summer it was someone from Minnesota was attacking the amount of people that were on antidepressants. And he thought that was contributing to more violence and more mass shootings, was somehow the connection he tried to make. And I just thought, what a crazy world we would live in if people lost their access to their mental health medications.
Well, I mean, let's face it, we don't really do a good job about mental health in this country anyway.
No.
At all.
I agree.
And I think that people use it sometimes as well, which it's not just now, it's been in the past as well. But they use it as an entry point into having darker conversations about things like institutionalization, which is what I see with the unhoused community right now. You want to talk about that a little bit? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's insane and it's crazy and it's all the things that, why anyone thinks that charging somebody $500, fining them $500 for being homeless is going to get anyone to stop being homeless is just, a crazy policy. And it shows that they are in it for, not to go down another rabbit hole that is not even a rabbit hole, but these people are making money off of incarcerating people. That, we have this huge for-profit prison system in our country. And we know that things, very usually democratic policies help keep people out of prison. And so in the history of even Indiana, and especially in blue states, we are seeing fewer inmates every single year, and that number is going down in many places. But these prisons still want to make their money, and so now we're coming up. Our politicians are coming up with new and creative ways to fill those beds. The goal is not to close any prisons. No one wants, no conservative right now wants to close prisons. They want to keep them full. And the way that they're going to do that, in my opinion, is they're going to start filling them with homeless people, and they're going to start filling them with mentally unwell people. And what better way to make more mentally unwell people than to take them off of their medication? So, yeah.
Well, and I guess all of us that are paying attention to this stuff right now, A, we're like, where's the line? B, any of us that study history, it's not like a hop and a jump to go back to Nazi Germany and we're like, oof. And this is where the eugenics conversation comes in. All of these things that we're doing, it seems like it's just cycling through this Nazi playbook that started here. I mean, we can talk about that too. Because, I mean, let's just face it. Part of what we do here is tell the truth. And I feel like if we don't tell the truth, we're never going to come to any sort of like real policy or real conclusion. Like, we don't expect to fix this stuff overnight, but if we can't at least have an honest and truthful conversation about these things or about the origin of these things, we're going to go nowhere.
Yeah, I agree. I think that in politics right now, whether it's the state level or the federal level, we are making policies based off of things that we know are not true. And it's all for show, and it's all to just exert power over other people. In Indiana, there were a few bills that were introduced this session that were truly based on feeling. They were not backed in fact at all. One being the bill that they wanted to find out that protesters had to say who they were being paid by. That is an example of protesters are not being paid. And, sane people know that protesters are not being paid, yet we continue to make policies based off of just an ideology and just to prove a point, because I think people aren't willing we need to all at least be on the same page on what is the truth and what is not the truth. And the truth is protesters aren't being paid. That is such a nonchalant example, but it's just one, if we can't even agree on those seemingly harmless facts, then how are we going to agree on facts when it comes to things like, how did eugenics affect Nazi Germany or whatever? Because we can't even agree that protesters in our state are not being paid. They are not. That doesn't happen. So,
well, I think you would have to attend a protest to actually see and be around these people. As kind of an early protester myself, who took my children? Like, I drove my children all the way out to DC. We went to one of the first veterans protests out there because I felt like everything that I was watching with the Trump administration and then RFK activated me.
mm-hmm.
And because my family's been here for a very long time, like, I have at least one ancestor that fought in the American Revolutionary War. I don't know. I think maybe I feel it differently. And so for my children, I'm like, they're American. They belong here. They have rights. I'm now going to take my children to see these things because they need to understand how this stuff goes. And coming from a very red area myself, my parents, MAGA, I firmly believe if the shoe was on the other foot, that my parents would probably feel the same way. And I think many people do feel that way. I do think Americans, protesting is in our blood. Like, we don't like to be told what to do. That is very much a Hoosier thing. Do you know any Hoosiers that like to be told what to do?
No, which is why it's so funny to me that we have a bill going through the state house right now that's the legislators are wanting to give our governor, who has a 25% approval rating, by the way. They want to give him the power to put this National Guard military police in our communities with no oversight, no community consent, no community cooperation. And
because that's gone really well in Minnesota.
Exactly. And I'm like, why? This is such an un-American and also just an un-Hoosier thing. Like, exactly. We don't want to be told what to do. We love in Indiana. We love local control, and people love to tout that. Yet we are arguing that our governor should be able to just put National Guard in our little towns whenever he wants to. It's so un-American, and it is extremely disappointing that we have come this far so quickly as a state.
Well, let's talk about fear, because I think that's the root of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
I personally believe that I've seen more people that I really love and have respect for that I saw evolve in a very different way since, the first Trump administration, for example. I've watched these particular maybe media outlets, content creators, things of that nature really double down on trying to exploit someone's religion, exploit someone's vulnerability whenever it comes to questions about healthcare. I I feel like we have a duty in places like this, especially whenever we come from red areas. Like, we have to tell the truth, because if we at least try, and if they know that we're speaking from our heart, right, then maybe it will appeal to people at some point. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's important to be truthful, to be authentic. I think it's important for people to, especially I think of like out in Carroll County, so very rural. And I think that some of the MAGA voices there have been so loud for so long. And I don't mean Republican voices, I mean the MAGA voices. There are a few of them and they're very loud. And I think that almost Democrats or progressive people have allowed themselves to be overshadowed, and they've allowed themselves to be demonized in a lot of ways. And it hasn't done anyone any favors. And I even feel the need in my campaign to compromise sometimes because of who.
Compromise how?
Just not even compromise. I guess when it comes to talking to rural constituents, you're like, how do I appeal to this? How do I, and, politicians get stuck in that a lot, trying to make sure that you're appealing to as many people as possible while still being true to yourself. And I think that it is difficult, but I think that it's important for, like you said, it's important to tell the truth, and it's important to humanize yourself and be out in the community. And like, if you get to spout all of this hate, I get to come out and talk the truth, and I get to be myself, and you don't take up any more space in this county than I do. And I'm not going to allow you to tell me to take up less space. And I think that Democrats in a lot of ways have allowed themselves to be pushed into a corner and become scared or nervous about speaking out, which was another reason I decided to run. I was like, if I can just inspire one person in my county to speak up about the injustices that they're seeing, then I will have done my job.
Well, the reason I wanted to talk about fear is because a lot of people are afraid right now. So what advice would you give to people that are afraid? What bits of advice would you give them as far as advocacy? What could they do now if they are afraid?
I think the best advice I have ever gotten when it comes to when you're afraid is to don't comply in advance. Don't be afraid of things that haven't happened yet, because then you don't try, and they have to work even, put in less effort to get you to do something. So never comply in advance, even if you're scared. When you are afraid, people feel that, like people know, and I think that other people then can feed into that, which is why I've taken the opposite approach, tried to be brave and use my voice whenever I can when other people are not. And I've noticed other people in my circle are speaking out more than I did. And I would like to think that I played a small part in that. So my number one thing is when you're afraid, you can be afraid, but don't comply in advance. Don't be afraid of something that hasn't happened yet. And I think with advocacy, the most important thing is it's okay to start small, and you're making an impact. You don't have to start with running for office like I seem to have. You can start by calling your legislator. You can start by putting a sign in your yard. You can start by talking to your neighbor that you're really maybe not exactly sure where they fall in politically, and just starting the conversation. Advocacy is not always huge. They can be small little steps. And then I think when you're brave enough to do one, then the next time maybe you're brave enough to go to a protest. I never, ever would have thought that I would go to a protest in my entire life. Just wasn't ever something I felt comfortable with. I was afraid. I was like nervous about it. But, I started doing little things and it just snowballed. And so don't comply in advance and start small, I think, are the most important things that we can all do.
So I'm getting from you that you're probably very spirited when it comes to community. What ways do you engage in your community in ways of advocacy?
So right now, It's different because I'm running for office. And so the things I'm doing are very like your typical, what is the candidate doing? So we're hosting a lot of listening sessions. We're building a community where people feel confident to engage in politics. I have also worked with trying to uh, create some kind of community even among candidates, because I think that is advocacy in a lot of ways, to make sure everyone else has a platform and feel like they, have community. I think it's kind of, as a candidate, those are things that I've done. But personally, I think as a teacher, making sure that you're an advocate for your students, joining local organizations, and, just I think even little things, going to a sports game and letting your students see you, those are you're an advocate in a lot of ways. So I think that looks different for everybody.
Okay. So have you already, or what will happen when you have someone that's very combative? Do you have a plan for how you're going to deal with that, how you're going to handle it?
You're talking like a constituent coming to a town hall or something. Is that, or yeah?
In any capacity, you could be driving to an event, you could be at a town hall meeting, you could be in your front yard.
I think so. I haven't had anyone extremely combative. So I'll get to that in a second. All I have done so far is I have had some people come to town halls in a very red county, right? I keep saying this because I think that's so important to understand where we're all coming from as candidates who want to come. And I think the best thing that I can do is to stay calm and stay rooted in fact. I think it's important as a candidate, you don't bend on your beliefs just because those people are standing in front of you. It's not helpful to them to disagree with them, but it's also not helpful to go to get as elevated as them. So staying calm, speaking with the facts, and just kind of hoping for the best. I think if I were to get somebody really combative, I think the same things, you staying calm and doing what you can to de-escalate the situation. I think there comes a point where someone is combative and I've come to terms with the fact not everyone's mind can be changed.
Sure.
So sometimes it's just getting out of that conversation. And it doesn't mean telling them that they're right. It doesn't mean anything, but it doesn't always mean arguing. I don't think that helps. Some people, they want to pick a fight. So it's important to sometimes just leave the conversation. You're not going to reach those people. So don't try to reach everybody. I've had to learn that lesson many times. I'm still learning it.
So when we're talking about morals, boundaries, lines, where are your lines on some issues? Do you have lines?
I do have lines, and I think that a lot of mine come, again, as a mom and as a teacher. Almost all of them are related to children. I think that some hard lines for me that you really cannot change my mind. I think that our schools should be great. I think that they should be well funded. There's no amount of arguing anyone can do with me to believe that we need to take money out of our public schools. That's a line that I'm not moving on. I think that all children, and it is actually shocking to me that some of these are lines to be drawn when I feel like they should just be a fact. That's how firmly I believe them. I think that no child should be hungry. So you would never convince me to cut SNAP benefits for any child ever. Like, I don't care if their parents make $1 million a year. If for some reason that child's not being fed, we need to feed that kid. So children should be educated. Children should be fed. I think that every single person deserves health care. Full stop. No one should be going bankrupt from medical bills. And so that's a definite line in the sand. So basic human rights are not something that I will compromise on. Healthcare, food, education, homelessness, obviously the line of this current legislation of fining people to be homeless, that's way across any kind of line I have when it comes to human dignity and respect. And yeah, the healthcare thing is a big one. My husband has had many healthcare challenges. I have my job. I love my job. And I always have to preface this. I do love my job. I've been doing it for 12 years. I wouldn't if I didn't love it. But a big part of why I've continued teaching through kids, and my husband had brain cancer. So luckily he's in remission now, but like we have to have health insurance.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone should be in a position like I am where I have to work because of health insurance. That's truly the reason. And I don't think anyone's job should be tied to their health insurance.
Let's go down that road a little bit farther. Can you give us some examples, either in this country or in other countries, of standards that you think we should use to maybe model a healthcare system that might work for all Americans?
So I think that this is where it always gets tricky, because no healthcare system is perfect, and anyone in any country can tell you things that are wrong with their healthcare, or their healthcare, or our healthcare, or whatever it is. But I think Canada has really done, a good job. They have wait times. That's the number one thing you hear about Canada, is it takes a long time sometimes to see a doctor. I know it takes a long time to see a doctor here too. So no one can tell me I know someone who has been waiting 9 months, almost a year, for their child to see an allergist because they're having like some throat and nose problems, and they're thinking it's allergies, and they've kind of been bounced around from ENT and allergists and all these people. And she's been waiting to see a specialist for her child for months and months. So this idea, this scary fact that, oh, well, Canada has these long wait times, doesn't really scare me that much, because there's plenty of long wait times here too. And I think whenever we look at Canada, I think it's important to look at the facts. And the facts are that Canada, they spend hardly anything on their healthcare. Yes, they might have long wait times, but their life expectancy is way higher than ours. So that should tell you something. So I think Canada...
Some comparison numbers for us just off the top.
Yeah, so I wish I knew the exact numbers.
Doesn't have to be exact.
So I know that United States, ours is like 76, 77 across the country. And I know that...
Male or female?
I just know that's the average. I don't know if it's male or female, but if you take the average, it's like 76, 77 years. And I know that Canada is like years higher. So you're adding years to a Canadian's lifespan versus the United States. I also know that United States, out of all the developed countries, we have the lowest life expectancy, and we spend the most on healthcare by, thousands of dollars, and have the shortest life expectancy by years. And so that... when I look at that, I'm like, that should be one of the most important statistics when deciding whether or not we need universal health care or Medicare for all, or whatever route or whatever word you want to use for it. The fact that all of these other countries have done it and are using this system, and they live longer than us, should be all we need to know, that that system is better than the system that we have here. So, yeah.
So what would you like to see in this country? I mean, if you had your choice, right? Even if it is past your lifetime, maybe we're talking about your children's lifetime. In an ideal world, what benefit do you think that you could make potentially to create this type of life that you would like to see for your children?
So I think in Indiana, I try to keep it somewhat local. I think in Indiana, the biggest thing that we can do, and what I would want my legacy to be as a senator, would be to make our taxes much more progressive. We have such a regressive tax system in Indiana, where we are taxing the average person way more than corporations and businesses and the wealthy. I should not be, as a consumer, paying a higher rate for my electricity than a data center is. And I think that problem, fixing taxes, I think most people think that they'd give an answer of like fixing homelessness, fixing the hunger crisis. I think that a lot of that starts with the tax problem, because Indiana, like I already said, we have an income problem. We don't have enough money to fulfill the needs of everything that we need to fulfill, all the basic needs of our people. But by fixing some of these tax issues, and that would be a start. That would at least be something tangible, fixing the tax code so it affects it harms really. It can harm some of these data centers and some of these things that we don't want instead of harming our families. So
What do you think, from your opinion, where you come from? What do you believe are Hoosier values?
I think Hoosier values are family. I think Hoosier values are sticking up for your neighbor. I think Hoosier values are making sure that we are following all of those good citizenship things. Don't steal, don't murder, but we like to say that those are religious values, which I don't believe that at all. I think that it's just important that we treat others how we want to be treated, family, and again, sticking up for your neighbor, sticking up for your community. And as we've seen recently, those have not necessarily been followed, especially the community one. So, yeah.
Do you think that these type of deep-seated Hoosier values are dead, dying, or do you think that maybe they're just dormant?
I think that our Hoosier values, family, community, and treating others how you want to be treated are alive and well. I just think that some of these voices that say that they believe in those things are just really, really loud. And so all of us normal Hoosiers, I like to say that we're all just normal people. And there's some not so normal people among us that are making us think that we're not that way, that we don't have those values anymore. But if you go door to door, if you're out in your community, we do. Like, that's how people act. We are, we help our neighbor in our small towns. We love our family. We would do a lot for if our neighbor needed help with something, like silly example of you would give your neighbor a cup of sugar if they came over. If there was an emergency, of course you'd watch their children for them. So I think that the average Hoosier, we are like that, and we still are like that. But we're letting all this extra noise create this separation that doesn't exist and amplify a separation that I really think exists only online and on social media. Because we're definitely divided on social media.
Sure. Would you consider yourself a progressive?
I consider myself a progressive. I think that it's taken me a long time to come to terms with that because, like I said, I come from such a conservative family. But I think I'm progressive. But unfortunately, with the right, I think now is so far right. I think that being a progressive we've almost lost what everything means because our scale is so tilted to one direction.
What does progressive mean to you? Because it can mean a little bit different things to everybody.
I think that being progressive, I guess, in my opinion, is that we are not hung up on these ideas of capitalism. We're not hung up on this idea of, and I think in Indiana, at least for me, being progressive is a progressive idea is truly believing in the separation of church and state, because that seems to be a really progressive idea here, that I'm not afraid to say that. I'm not afraid to say I don't think that we should have religion in schools. I don't think that churches who aren't contributing to their community should be getting tax exemptions. So I think in Indiana, that is a progressive, value. So yeah, separation of church and state is one that maybe is not super progressive, but I believe in it. And I think things like Medicare for all can be very progressive, and those are things that I believe in. I'm also not, I don't think that deporting every single illegal person that is in our country or undocumented, I don't think that or keeping it local, keeping it in our state, I don't think that is humane, and I also don't think that is economically responsible. We don't have the money in Indiana to deport every single undocumented person. So in those ways, I think people would see me as a progressive, at least.
What are your thoughts on Gaza?
So Gaza, obviously, I believe that it's a genocide. And I think that this is something that I've opened my eyes a lot to. I wasn't always politically involved because I had so much I don't know, wishy-washy growing up. Didn't really know how I fit in. So this is something like a new topic for me. And the more I get into politics and understanding the United States position in the world, and even it affects Indiana as well, and Indiana politicians. The money that we send to Israel and then the atrocities that they're committing in Gaza is a huge concern to me. And I have lost respect for politicians on both sides of the aisle that continue to take money for AIPAC and continue to vote for sending money to Israel. I love to use the example that Israel has universal health care. We send money to Israel to fund their universal health care, yet we don't have it. So yeah, Israel is something that I feel pretty strongly about. I don't think that we should be sending money to Israel. I don't think that's America first. And then obviously what they're doing in Gaza is unforgivable. And to talk about people wanting to build a resort there the fact that we're giving those people a platform and still legitimizing them as people is extremely concerning.
Do you feel that this situation would violate Hoosier values?
Yes. And I think any Hoosier, if they saw the news and saw the video footage that I have seen of what is happening in Gaza, would be appalled. But I don't think that many Hoosiers, including myself not that long ago, knew or know exactly what is going on. And it's easier. It's easier just to not pay attention. And I think many Hoosiers, including myself again, not that long ago, fell into. It's just so much easier to not pay attention.
Speaking of Gaza and large hotels and things of that nature, what are your thoughts on Mark Rowan?
I am concerned about the money that he has. I'm concerned about how he's using the money that he has. He's obviously tied to Epstein, which is never a good thing. We all deserve to know the truth. The victims deserve justice. So anyone involved in that and anyone involved in hiding and covering up for Epstein is a concern for me, and it's something that needs to be investigated. It should not just be swept under the rug, and more people should be talking about it.
What do you think Hoosiers think about pedophilia and the just general response to the information that they're getting right now?
So I always like to use this example when it comes to Hoosiers and pedophilia is, I'm on, like many Hoosiers, on Facebook. I'm on all my small town Facebook groups. And frequently you have these, usually men, posting and like, I hate to use the word doxing because maybe these people deserve it, but where they post like the address and the mugshot and like, oh, this guy who lives on 102 Willow Street, he was accused of this. And they just like blacklist that person. And everyone in the community knows what that person did, where they live. And people take it very seriously, as they should. Just being accused of something like that is a huge deal. And no one in the community wants to associate with you. And then, but for some reason, that is not echoed on our national stage. And I'm like, why do we in our communities understand that that is crossing a line? It's a deal breaker. Yet we have these people in our government who are accused and photographed doing really terrible things to underage people, children. Yet we just sweep it under the rug and we just go with it. And we don't. And I say we. That is not true. There's just a small group of people that seem to just go with it and excuse it and act like it's not true. I don't know the amount of mental gymnastics it must take for some of these people to say that it doesn't matter and no one's been accused of anything, at least truthfully, is wild to me when we do care so much as Hoosiers.
As a mother and as a Hoosier yourself, who has children, what are your personal thoughts on some of these things, separate from being a candidate?
Do you mean like, are we trying to think?
you can go wherever you want with this, but I think it would be important for people to see the Natasha as a person, just individually and as a voter, and also the Natasha as a candidate, and to see if there's an overlap and where that overlap is.
I think that it's important. So as a mom, I do whatever it takes to protect my children. I am doing this because I felt like I had no control over the future my children were going to grow up in. So when it comes to predators and people being accused of terrible crimes against children, I'm going to do what I can as a mom to protect my kids. And I know that if someone in my life was even accused of something, I would, as a mom, not even trust my child to go there without me, or maybe at all, depending on the situation. And so I think that as a mom, I protect them, whether that means not taking them somewhere. We protect our children by not exposing them to certain kinds of media and whatever. And I think that as a mom, as a candidate, my policies would mirror those things. We need to protect our children. I'm okay with like the new social media rules with children and underage people using social media. And because it all comes down to, I think, protecting our kids from predators. And I think as a mom and as a candidate, the answer is the same. We need to take care of our children. They're the future of our state. They're like every single mom, like my kids are everything to me, and I'll do anything I can to keep them safe. So
do you think that sort of response would mirror most Hoosier moms, irregardless of what political party they were part of?
Yes, absolutely. Which is why sometimes it is so confusing to me, because I know on a personal level, you protect your kids. But for some reason, when it comes to our politics, somehow the answer is sometimes different, or we excuse certain things from certain people when we shouldn't.
Yeah. So, would you consider yourself a battle-ready candidate? Let's say that you end up being the Democratic nominee. How do you feel that you're ready to take on the Republican candidate?
This is something that I have thought about. The Republican side of my race has already gotten pretty messy, and the two going against each other. So me, if I end up being the candidate, I am, concerned, but I have to remember who I am, why I'm doing this, and make sure that people really know who I am as a person, because I actually made a fake attack ad against myself because I'm like, what are they going to try to say? They're going to try to say that I'm a crazy liberal, and all of these things. I'm like, I can, at least play up on that, because I know what the attacks are. There's already rumors going around that I'm this loopy person and I've abandoned my conservative values. And so it's already starting. It's already out there.
What do you think they feel is loopy?
Well, I think they mean loopy. Well, number one, I'm a woman, and that's people love to say, right? That women are crazy. They can't control their emotions. So I think they're definitely going to play on that. I am myself on social media. I will say that I have never seen a political candidate that puts so much of their life and their policy thoughts and their ideas out on social media to be picked apart and to be judged. There is no, and I think that will help me in the future, because when they try to say, well, this is what she is like, I'm like, I have been documenting my life for you for 7 months. 8 months now. I post multiple times a day, break down my thoughts on legislation. I break down my thoughts on current news, and I make silly videos that show myself, that show me as a mom, that just show me as a regular person. And so I think, and I hope, that does cushion me some from these attacks, because they're only going to have so much to work with. There's no secrets. I'm very clear with my policies and what I believe. And so I'm not sure, again, like someone tried, I just created a and I just created it. It was a few months ago. I implemented a gun lock program in Tippecanoe and Carroll County, so people can ask me for free gun locks. I have like half of mine out that I need to get out, but yeah, people can ask for free gun locks, and I'll give them. And people are like, "Don't let her fool you. Like, she's a crazy liberal." That's what everyone was like commenting on the news, and I'm like, fool anyone? Like, what do you mean fool? You can go check my social media from the last 6 months now. I'm not fooling anyone. Like, what you see is what you get. It would be a lot of effort to put up this weird front, and people accuse you of anything. And so, yeah, I hope that my social media and being so transparent with who I am helps me if I end up, winning my primary.
So let's talk about guns, because you and I are from very rural areas.
Yep.
So let's just go there. What are your thoughts on guns?
So we are gun owners. My husband and I are gun owners. We've always had guns. I grew up with guns in my house, and I was very disappointed by our recent news when our president and Kristi Noem came out and said, well, he had a gun, talking about Alex Preddy. He had a gun at a protest. He got what he deserved. And, he shouldn't have done that. And just insinuating that having a gun was a reason to shoot somebody. And that goes against everything that our country stands for. When it comes to the Second Amendment, and whether you agree with the Second Amendment or not, that is the current law. That's the belief that many people hold. And so to see Republicans, especially even Republicans in my own race, who run on a pro Second Amendment platform, to just fold so quickly was really disappointing to me. I believe in gun safety. Obviously, I'm doing this. I have gun locks. I know that's not the best solution ever, but
what made you think, like, where did this idea come from that this is something maybe you should include in your campaign, or as part of your campaign, is to provide gun locks?
So I'm a teacher, and I have been in situations where we've had a lockdown, or watching the news, and you see it literally daily of a school shooting, and I don't like having to live with that fear. And most of these, when you really dig into the situation, the teens who commit these school shootings are often, they get their guns from home where they weren't locked up, and their parents said, well, I taught them not to do that, so they shouldn't have done it. Like, well, we need more than that, in my opinion. Gun locks, guns come with gun locks. That doesn't mean people use them. And not everyone buys their gun new. That's what people said. They came at me and said, well, you get a gun lock with your gun. Like, this is stupid. Like, not everyone gets their gun brand new. Like, like, people know that. They just want to come at you. So
let's talk about that, because maybe people don't know that.
Right. Yeah. When you get
what happens in this state? What would be a very common thing to happen in this state, especially in rural areas, whenever it comes to transferring ownership of guns?
I mean, I think that, I think that it's important that, I don't know.
I'll tell you what I've seen happen.
Yeah.
Normally, it's not that hard if someone wants to purchase a gun from, like, let's say I want to buy a gun from you.
Right.
As far as legally, I don't think that there are any specifications necessarily. If you had a gun in your pocket right now and I'm like, hey, I kind of like that, I'd like it, I'll give you $100 for it in cash. I could buy that gun from you, and now your gun would be my gun.
Exactly. And it doesn't come with the gun lock, because I just gave it to you.
It doesn't come with the transfer.
Yes. Only new guns come with the gun lock.
Yeah.
So
it is legal in this state, as far as I know.
Yes.
And because now we're an open carry state, because my parents, like I said, also come from a Republican area. I remember when they were getting ready, or they were having conversations about discontinuing the lifetime carry permit. And my dad at that point was like, all of you are going to go get your lifetime carry permit, just in case. Because I come from one of those places and one of those families that sort of thinks of things like that as more tools in your toolbox. Personally, I fired a vast array of guns. I think it's very common when you grow up in Indiana, especially in rural settings, that you do.
Right.
I think that is a very common Hoosier thing to do, especially in rural areas. I had not felt the need personally to own my own until recently. I still don't have one yet because I have little kids and I'm a little conflicted. However, I think that it's significant to have that conversation with people because I think a lot of people are having this sort of conversation. And I think it would be helpful for you right now to speak your piece on that because you would potentially be going up against these Republicans. So what are your thoughts on all of that?
I mean, I agree with you that, rural guns are a part of rural Indiana. And I incorporated this into my campaign because I understood that. And I understood, in places in Carroll County or out in Battleground where I live, like guns are a part of life there. But we can do it in a way that's safe. I think there are also some conversations that can be changed a little bit. I think that just relying on other people to be good parents is a really bad policy. Because that's what people say. They're, well, I taught my kids not to touch the gun, and they're never going to touch that gun. When I was little, my grandpa left his gun in the corner of the house, and none of us ever touched it. I'm like, you have way more faith in some of these parents than I do. Because I know that some of these parents are not having these kind of conversations with their kids, which is why I think when it comes to kids and safety, that is where I am focused on. People love to say, well, a gun that's locked is a paperweight. That's not going to help you if someone breaks in. And my argument at the moment is the fact that 9 guns locked up versus having all 10, at least have 9 of them locked up. If you want to have one unlocked with the current laws and current whatever, it's the fact that we don't need all 10. You can have a gun lock on the other 9. I also think that it's important to, if I were to any kind of gun legislation, right? Because people love to ask me this question. So like gun legislation for me, the number one thing I would want to see is that when there are little kids at home, minors in the house, that they have to be safely secured. There are options that still allow you to get your gun very quickly, fingerprint, like biometric boxes, and those types of things. I don't believe that you should be allowed to just have your gun sitting on your counter when you have a 3-year-old in your home. And you can be the best parent in the world, but you cannot control what a 3-year-old does. A baby, people love to bring up that, well, if someone breaks in, I need to be able to get it quickly. But and I see where they're coming from, but everything is risk and reward. More than half of all gun deaths or even accidents in Indiana and in our country are from suicides and accidental shootings. So just to say that I need to be able to use it if someone breaks in, you're ignoring another risk. And the other risk is that someone is going to get this gun that shouldn't have the gun in your own house. You're statistically more likely to be shot by your own gun than anyone else's gun. I'm not creating a gun registry. I'm not for banning guns. Liberals, especially liberal women, they love to blame us for wanting to blame guns and
deepen this conversation because I do think that's a fallacy that people often say, right? Like you and I, we were clearly raised in very red areas by very red parents.
Yep.
And here we both would consider ourselves progressive. Here we've both handled guns. We believe in gun safety. How do you think that we have a very productive conversation that includes everybody to reach the end goal of protecting these kids?
Yeah, I think I like to say that the answer is facts, but unfortunately I am learning that sometimes these are not facts that we're debating. Sometimes it truly is a feeling. And I think it's always important for people not to feel like their freedoms are being imposed on, even though I think our freedoms are being imposed on in a lot of ways that seem not to be a big deal for people. I don't think anyone should be able to knock down my door without a warrant and search my house because they think I don't have the right skin color. But for some reason, no, people aren't complaining about that. They're busy complaining about people taking their guns away, which isn't even happening. But I think that it's important for people to understand the facts that you are more likely to be killed by your own gun, especially, children. That's one of the leading causes of death. And everyone can agree that we want the best for our children and we want the best for our kids. And so to just frame the conversation in a way that puts the children truly at the heart of it. And I'm not for like searches of houses, that's people, again, they like to say that liberals, in order to enforce these policies, would be for like people coming in your house and just doing like random searches, like, are your guns? Like any safety violation, typically those happen after. And there's really I would never advocate for random searches of anyone's home. I live in this society too. I would never make a law that I wouldn't want to be subjected to myself. And that includes random people walking into my home to check for something. So those kinds of safety things happen afterwards, after an incident occurs, which unfortunately there's no other way to do it, but at least those protections are in place for our children and for other people's children. My heart breaks every time I read the news, and it's like, a child, a 5-year-old accidentally shoots their 7-year-old brother because they found a gun that was unsecured, or they, shot themselves, or even shot their parent.
So this is why you're bringing out this
Yes,
talk.
right. Because I want to show that I am willing to support the Second Amendment in a way that's authentic to me. And people can take that however they want to take it. But if we want the Second Amendment, I think the best way to keep the Second Amendment alive and strong is to make sure that we're using it in a way that is safe, and especially safe for our kids. And we just saw in the news with the Alex Preddy situation, like I said, that how easily politicians flip their stance on guns when it no longer suits them, and when people are using it irresponsibly, if that's even what you want to call it, which I don't believe Alex Preddy was being irresponsible with his gun.
And how would you have felt if Alex Preddy had been a Republican, had been MAGA? How would you have felt? What would have been your reaction to that exact same scenario if Alex Preddy had been MAGA?
I think that anyone watching the video of Alex Preddy on his knees with his face towards the ground, with his hands, kind of by his side, and him being shot after his gun was unholstered, anyone who saw that and thought that that was just was not watching the same video I was watching. And it didn't matter what his political affiliation was. It doesn't matter what he was doing. Like, no one in this country deserves to be shot execution style. So it wouldn't have mattered to me. It wouldn't have mattered because, again, he was on his knees. He was unarmed at that point. And it didn't matter what his political affiliation was.
So a female progressive would have been making the argument that Alex Preddy, hypothetically, MAGA Alex Preddy, deserved the same rights as all of the rest of us.
Yes, exactly. That was the point, I guess, I was trying to make.
Yeah. Sometimes I think with some of these conversations, we need to lead the horse to walk.
Yes. I mean, yeah, exactly. He does deserve the same rights. You would have
stood up for him the same way.
Yeah, I would have said that he didn't deserve to be shot with his face towards the ground.
Because you believe in the Second Amendment.
Yes, I believe in the Second Amendment, and I believe in the First Amendment. And he had every right to be doing what he was doing. And according to our current law in Minnesota as well, like, he had the right to be carrying concealed or unconcealed. It didn't matter. And so, I would have stood up for him the same way as there are people who are MAGA who are getting thrown into these detention centers. And I stand up for them the same way that I stand up for an undocumented migrant in a detention center or a liberal that gets put into a detention center unlawfully. It doesn't matter to me. Those are constitutional liberties that are being taken away from us. And we need everyone on board to stand up and say, that is not right. It doesn't matter who you are. Citizens don't get thrown into detention centers for being who they are, which is what's happening.
So it kind of sounds like to me, if you're anything, you're a progressive constitutionalist.
Yeah, I think that you can't pick and choose which part of the Constitution you want to follow.
Interesting. So what are your thoughts then on people that would say, you know, women are too emotional to run for office. They're not a good fit for office because they can't make hard decisions. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that men in our state, in our country, have been leading for so long, and it hasn't gotten us very far in some cases. So, we could argue that men are too emotional and full of testosterone and making decisions based on feeling or
Feeling instead of fact.
exact feeling instead of fact. And I just think that a person is a person, and women are able to handle so much. Moms and I can't even fall into that trap of believing that women are too emotional when we're able to keep our houses together, we're able to keep our jobs, we're able to take care of our children, and to also think that we can't be political candidates it doesn't sit well with me.
Okay. So who would be your favorite American president?
Oh man. These questions are so hard for me because I said
We're gonna say this one's my favorite and why.
yes, no, these ones are hard for me because I have not always been super into politics. But I would say my favorite American president, if I had to pick one, let's see. It's not something I've thought a lot about. Would probably be, I hate to use this as an example, as my answer, because I feel like it's everyone's go-to answer, but Obama would be one of my favorite ones, because I do think that he did a lot to try to unite Americans, even though he's the one that many people on the right like to say was very divisive. So I think, yeah, he did a lot to unite people, or at least try to unite people. I also appreciated that he could speak in complete sentences. I appreciate that he showed people respect. There's many clips of Obama speaking with people of many different political backgrounds, and he gives everyone space. He does what he can to keep the division from spreading, and I guess that's what I mean by kind of unifying, is he at least didn't cause division. Versus, we hear a lot of that right now in the news of blaming one side or the other, and I think both sides do it. I think Indiana Dems recently, the actual Indiana Dems, I've noticed on their social media, it's a lot of putting Republicans out in the spotlight. And I understand it. I do get it. It's important for people to realize who's making the policies. But I think it doesn't do much to always, if every message that we send out is always Republicans are doing this. And I think that happens in our national media. It happens in our state media. I don't think that, Republicans should be calling Democrats evil, liberal, radical, anarchists, or whatever the word of the day is. I think that does create division. And I thought Obama at least did a good job of not doing that. So kind of just some of the opposites. And I hate that that's the benchmark that I'm using, but at least it was complete sentences, setting the bar really low, complete sentences, no division, or at least less division. But I didn't agree with everything he did either. So yeah.
Okay. Who is your favorite first lady?
My favorite first lady would be, let's see. I would say, I don't know, Jackie Kennedy is just because she's the one I think of when I think of a first lady. I think of someone that is graceful, and someone who, again, was able to show the United States, I feel like, in a good light, at least on the outside. I think that I'm learning the more I get into politics. There's a lot of everyone has their ulterior motives when it comes to these very powerful people. But at least on the outside, very much was graceful and trying to show America as, being a role model to people, not creating division, and trying to represent all people. And I think that's important for elected officials to do. You are a first lady or you're the president to all people, not just the people that voted for you, not just in the states that voted for you. And so I think that's an important thing.
How do you think the Democrats can do better?
I think that the Democrats can do better by, this is where it gets tricky because I'm not always happy with some of the messaging that comes out. But then I really think about what would I do differently? Because I understand the fact that it is important. I think we've gotten to this place in some ways by not calling out who is making some of these bad policies.
Like not cleaning our own house, basically.
Yeah. And so I think it's important to see who's in charge and who's making the bad decisions. I think that Democrats can be, I guess really locally, kind of almost changing the subject, just locally Democrats. I was very unhappy to read about in Marion County with the delegate situation. It is Democrats in Indiana specifically. If we want to say that we're the party of democracy and we're the party of the Constitution, and we believe that everyone has a voice, and all of these messages that we all try to put out, or at least the more progressive people in the party, but then to have some different kind of takes on it where we're going to challenge our own candidates because they don't fall in line with the party is not something I think that supports where we are at as a country or as a state, and undermines our message that we are for democracy and we're for the voice of the people. So Democrats in Indiana can do better of widening this umbrella and including some different viewpoints, because we haven't been successful as a party in Indiana. So we need to change it up. To just do what we've always been doing clearly hasn't worked for us the past 25 years. So we need to change.
How do you feel that you would represent the different minority populations in Indiana?
So I feel like I can represent the minority populations because I believe in human rights. Sometimes our policymakers make these choices and people don't want to say that they're racist, but when you are specifically pulling out zip codes and we're creating food deserts, and you can even say that rural Hoosiers are a minority, and we're excluding rural Hoosiers from having access to OBGYNs and quality grocery stores. And so I think it's important to elect people who recognize the needs and understand how policy can affect different people, and want good for all people instead of just people who look like them or act like them or from the same place as them. So I'd want to make sure that, I was Chris Garton, I don't even know how to say his last name. He's from rural Indiana, one of our current senators. And he said that people understand that when you live in rural Indiana, it costs more. You're going to have to drive more to places. And we have enough money and we have enough resources, and most of the people in Indiana are rural. We need to support rural communities, not blame them for living out in the middle of nowhere. And I did not agree with that sentiment at all, for punishing people for being rural or punishing people for living in downtown Indianapolis or wherever it is. We like to kind of separate people based on those. So, yeah.
What are your thoughts in big money in politics?
I think that big money has no place in politics because I don't want to sell off my democracy. I want to know that the candidate that I'm voting for has the support of the people in their district, the people in their state. I don't want them getting money from out of state places. Why does that person want them elected in my state? That doesn't make sense to me. So I think that it does well for a politician to be getting their money from the people who want them elected. All of my donations have come from small donations from mostly people in my state. And if they were not in my state, it was because they were related to me who donated money. So I think that's important. And big money means big responsibility to donors. And you have to wonder, why does this person want that person donated? I don't want to take any money from anyone that then I have to turn back and like feel like I owe something to. I don't owe anything to anyone except for the people who elect me, not the people who give me money. So, yeah.
What are your thoughts on instituting a term limit for House reps, senators, state or federal?
Yeah, I think everyone deserves legislators who have a term limit. I don't think that you should continue to get elected cycle after cycle after cycle just because you have the name recognition. Because in Indiana, not only do we not vote very often, many people sit elections out, but we're also pretty uninformed voters. We vote straight ticket. We don't always know a lot about our representatives. And so when we vote, and I know that I used to do this too. Like you vote and you're like, oh, I know that name. Mm-hmm. And people hit the name. Sure. And so that allows these people who have been in the legislature for forever, to continue to stay in there. Just because they have a name doesn't mean that they were good at the bills that they introduced weren't good, or they were great at working with their constituents. They just get elected because people in the area recognize their last name when they go to the ballot. And I think that it lets people be complacent. I think it lets people get a little lazy. I think it allows people to start profiting off of their office, which is not what they're there to do. Politicians in Indiana don't make very much money. It's a normal salary. So how some of these senators and representatives in our state have multiple houses I'm like, that other things are going on. It's not something that you do to get rich, or it shouldn't be, but somehow people are getting very rich off of it from, side deals and corrupt business decisions, and giving contracts to their families and giving contracts to their families or their friends. I think our governor at the moment really likes to do that. No big contracts to people that he knows. So, not only are our politicians getting rich, but their friends and their family are benefiting off of that as well. And I think that gets worse because we don't have term limits. So I think that term limits would help solve a lot of issues in our state. I know that the Republican in my race, he's been in the legislature the longest out of every senator. He's very well known. And, that's going to make it hard for me to beat because his name is so well known. But, we need change in Indiana. Everyone knows that we need change, and voting the same way is not going to get us there.
What's your campaign doing to help educate voters right now about their rights and about their civic duty?
So I've said already that I am very active on social media. So I make a lot of videos. I did, when it was time to start registering for to get your paperwork in for being a delegate or for being a precinct chair, Blythe Potter and I did a whole little video together trying to educate people and tell them, what is a delegate? Like, what do you do? What's a precinct chair? And then Blythe came up to Lafayette, and she and I did a whole become a delegate night where we talked about being a delegate, and we talked about, and we actually got people signed up, and we had a notary on site, and trying to get people excited about voting because it's so important. But I just think that people don't realize just how important it is and how much their voice does matter. It's important when you're looking at a race. Don't look at the total amount of votes. It's important to look at the difference. And then sometimes the difference is only 100 people. I know someone, so Tiffany Stoner in Boone County, she lost by 64 votes or something. If 64 more people would have gotten off of their couch that day to vote, she would have been the winner. And so I think it's important to look at that. It's also important to remember that you might not know everything. You might not know who every single person is on the ballot. You might feel a little awkward when you go to vote because you haven't done it very much, or you just don't know how the process works and you're kind of nervous about it. But at least you're doing it, because in Indiana, what's normal is to sit at home and not do anything. So be okay with being a little comfortable. And again, your voice does matter. Don't look at the total votes, look at the difference. And that, I think, helps people, that can click in people's head a little bit more, because they're like, oh, 60,000 people voted. It doesn't matter. Like, I'm one of 60,000. It's like, no, you are one of 300 people that could have been the deciding vote. So I think that, so making videos about educating people, getting people like Blythe Potter involved in the conversation seems to help as well.
So what is it about you specifically on both sides? Because we're going to be optimistic here and say that you're going to be the nominee, right? What is it about you specifically that you think is so profound that people should choose you to represent them?
I think people should choose me because I'm in it for all of the right reasons. I am a normal mom. I'm a Hoosier raising Hoosiers, so I am in it for my kids. And I am young enough that the votes that I make as a senator will affect me for years to come. They're going to affect my kids years to come. And I am not in it to get rich. I am truly in it because I see a need in our state that needs met to have different voices in politics. I firmly believe that we need more moms in politics. We have so many people making decisions for our children that don't seem to understand or remember what it's like to have kids and what it feels like to be in the trenches raising children, and our economy and how expensive things can be. If we have politicians right now who still believe that the reason that young moms and young families can't afford to buy houses because they spend too much money on lattes or whatever. And it's just like, we need people who are living it right now. Like, I'm not retired. I don't own 2 houses. I haven't been legislating for 30 years. I am only in it because I really want a better state for my kids. I want better schools. And I don't think that we're getting it from our current representatives.
And the last thing, I ask everybody this. Now, this is Natasha as an individual, not Natasha the candidate. We've talked about a lot of things today. What is one thing? What is the most important thing that you want people to remember about you?
I want people to remember that I am just a person trying to do the best that I can. I have gone through a lot of hardships in my life. I've mentioned my husband and going through brain cancer with him 4 years ago. And I am a gritty person who's willing to put in whatever the work is to make something happen. I think that's, something about me is I'm willing to work however hard it takes to do whatever it is I want to do. And right now I want to be the best mom for my kids and help create the best future for them as possible.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you coming on today. I think a lot of people are really going to find this conversation valuable. Is there anything that we didn't talk about that you want to touch on?
I don't think so. I feel like I really covered most of who I am. If you want to learn more about me, the best place is to find me on Facebook, find me on TikTok. And I'm so transparent on there, and I really put it all out on the line so people know exactly who they're voting for and exactly the kind of legislator that they were to get if I were to win and go to the State House.
Well, thank you so much for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
See everybody later. We are at a pivotal point in American history. We do not have the luxury to remain silent. Programs are disappearing every day. We hope that this podcast raises awareness and sparks a sense of advocacy in you. We all can make a difference. The important thing is to start. See you next time.